Perfect. Well, welcome everybody to True North Manufacturing Demo. I will be presenting today. My name is Paul Medina. We're going to go over a flushing method of manual flush today, just so I can show you guys just a little bit more ways of how we can handle it. On our previous series, we did do back flush. So if you guys ever want to access to those videos, I'm sure we can provide that for you. Sorry, guys. Try to get my slideshow to function for y'all. So some of the subjects that we'll be going through is our locations. That's obviously the most important to start with, just to see a simple build out and what we actually need when we're doing manufacturing orders. We're going to go into some work centers and machine centers. I did create a um, more interested. I created one with layers, and I created one very simple, just a simple setup, simple flow. But I also created some. They'll touch on our bombs and our routings, which are more routing link codes. For example, if you're using a machine to maybe cut some fabric, or you have to sew something up at a certain point, and you want to cover that cost. I've set up a more complicated version of that. Just again, just so you guys have more variety and you see how the system can work. I'll give you the base minimum that's required, but I'll also provide you a little more complicated version of it. We will also be going through some bombs, which I'll show you the routing link codes in there. And then just our simple item setup and SKUs. I'm just going to touch on that quickly. And then we're going to go into the planning worksheet, and we can see how we can bring in demand for our items through there and create orders from there. But I'm also going to go into our firm plan, released, and eventually we're going to finish our production orders. Obviously, when you go into the firm plan, it's really like we're thinking about creating this product, and then once we release it, that means we're going to get started on it, and then we're going to finish it off by doing consumption and output journals. And then I also want to show you guys how you guys could trace that at the end if we're using lot contents for whatever reason. You know, if we need to recall that product, we can trace it. We can see what sales order it went to and what production orders it came from. And then at the end, if we have time, hopefully we can answer some questions. So that being said, here's my screen. I have my PM demo land set up for us to get started. So the first thing I want to start is I actually want to start a little different. I want to start off with showing work centers and machine centers. So I'm going to go into my work centers. So when you think about work centers, think about your assembly lines. If you have a certain departments in your warehouse where you're going to do manufacturing for your product, think about more as a line, right? Anything that requires certain steps and it goes through this, that's more of your work center. A machine center, when we're talking about that, is more like a sewing machine. Maybe you have to send it to go get painted. Maybe someone has to hand cut out something. That's more of your machine centers, and they can be affiliated with the work center. So your machines can live in your work center, essentially. Some that I built out for us for the demo was this assembly department and our packaging department. Let's go ahead and look at those. For this demo, I wanted to do something different, so I actually did a medical supply. I did a face mask and actually build it out from a fabric and a drawstring and sew it together and things of that nature. So here, my first work center is my assembly department. Just your general information. You can make it part of a work center group just so it's easier to filter by on the main screen. You can have a different search name. If you're used to pulling something up, if you call it something unique, wherever you might be, you can put that in there just to make it easier for you. You can see the last time I modified this. If for whatever reason this work center is, obviously down, or I'm doing maintenance on it, I could block it. Therefore, obviously, I cannot do production orders here, and that's where an alternate work center will come into play. So for example, I have my 401 assembly department, but also have an 100. So if this is down, it'll shoot the remaining work orders to the 100 department. Here's our graphical scheduler. This is just more of an add-on for Microsoft, so I'm not going to touch too much on this. You have your posting, obviously. How much does it cost me? What's my indirect cost? What's my overhead? And that equates to your unit cost total. I'm saying per unit, it's going to cost me about 20 cents to make each one. And then again, I'm using a flushy method of manual, and then I have my general production posting group that I want to account for, and it's called medical manufacturing. Obviously, if we're using dimension codes, we can build those out and track those as well. If this is a subcontractor, if I'm sending this out to a work center of one of my subcontractors and they need to send it back, here's where I'd enter my subcontractor number. And then here's how I can schedule. I like to schedule in minutes. You can do it in hours and in days. It's really up to you. This capacity one is interesting. So whenever you see capacity, it means how many of these work centers do I have? Maybe I have multiple assembly departments. Maybe I have 3 in-house. So I would change that to 3. But for this instance, I only have 1. So I'm saying, no, this is just 1 assembly department and that's all I have. The efficiency is obviously up to you. I've never seen a work center be 100% efficient. So I put mine at 98% just so it accounts for any kind of issues or cleanup that I have to do. And then obviously I need to build out my shop calendar code. I have just my day shift code, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like. You do have to drill in, but here you just have your base code. What do you want to call it? And then you can actually look at your shop calendar if you want to drill down into your hours and days. And you can also have a work shift code itself. So I just build out a typical Monday through Friday first shift from 6 to 3 p.m. You can continue on and you can build out more. So for example, if I do the drop down, there's my second shift. I can even create a new and create a third shift. If I'm 24/7, 365, I could build that out. It's just different shop calendar code and different working days. Very simple. The drop down is just your Monday through Sunday, and then you can start anytime and end at any time. It's really up to you how you want to build that out. And once we have that code, we'll just drop it in there, and that's what'll help with our capacity management and our load management as well. And then if I require any kind of queue time, and how do I want that to be there? So if I require 5 minutes of queue time just to get set up, I could set that up there. And then if I want this tied back to a certain location, so for example, I have my location code manufacturing. If I want it tied back to that specific one, I can. You can see I have more than one warehouse, so it's really up to you. Or you can leave it blank and you can say this is an assembly department for either or, and I just choose for this moment to assign it to the manufacturing warehouse. Another unique thing when you're dealing with work centers, if you have a specific bin that you want it to be consumed into, in a specific bin that you want it to be outputted into, you can select that here. It does not have to be the default one on your location cards. So that's also something to think about. Obviously, if I have certain product that goes straight into the shelves, then I want it there. If I have specific products that has to sit in QA, for example, I could build that out as well. So that's something to think about in the future. Again, touching back on that shop calendar code, that really triggers our loads and how many minutes we have of capacity throughout that day. So if we go into our calendar view up top, right next to home, we click on home and you get calendar, you want to hit that show matrix. And it'll actually show me based on minutes, how many minutes of the day can I actually do some work orders here and what's going to consume my time. If I had some work orders allocated, I could drill into this and it'll show me, hey, here's your capacity, here's what you're using up. It's another nice way to drill down and to actually see this. If for whatever reason, I ran into this a lot, people say, hey, my work centers aren't working or it's not calculating the time. It's usually to the calendar code. What you want to do is just recalculate that and make sure that these numbers show up. Obviously here are blank because these are Saturday and Sunday, so you do not have any time capacity on those days. But very interesting, right? Some are in seconds, I have some in minutes, and some are shorter, just depending on my work center calendar. So that's something to think about. And then more of the same with the load, which is showing me the capacity that this has just individually by this work center. And you can say that I have 17 allocated and I have some work orders to do here. And I could drill into that and I could see kind of what took up that time. So that's your basic work center. Like I said, you can have Any kind of work center you want, I just simply have assembly and packaging. Usually one follows the other. And I also build out some machines to go into those. So let me show you my machine centers now. So here in my machine center, I created a cutting press and a sewing machine. I created a cutting press because I'm going to be making medical mask. But obviously, I buy the fabric in yards, so I need to cut it with a certain machine to cut out the design. So I use my cutting press here and I build that out. Here in my cutting press, again, it might have a different cost. I might not just cover it all under my work center. I want it to have its own cost. So I'm saying that it costs me 2 cents of mask to cut out. And then again, the flushing method we're using is manual, and I want to hit that medical manufacturing posting group, and I only have one. So this is a great example. If I had more than one cutting press, I could put, hey, I have 2 of them, I have 3 of them. That'll help me streamline things. It'll help with my capacity. It'll, obviously if I'm cutting a lot of mask throughout the day or any kind of fabric, we want to make sure that we account for how many presses we actually have. And I'm going to say this cuts perfect every time. And if this requires a certain setup time, I could do that as well. This is a little different from the work center because it might take me a few minutes to set up my cutting press to get it aligned correctly with the shape that I want to cut it out. So I say it takes me about a minute to set up and then a minute to move on and set up the next one. And based on the location go, this is going to go straight into manufacturing. And again, if I want a certain output or consume through a certain bin code that's not on my location card, I could do that as well. And this will just take part of whatever work center it partakes. So for example, whenever you see this work center number, I could assign it. So I've assigned these cutting machines to the assembly department. So that's why you see here, the location code is kind of blanked out. I can't mess with it because that's where it's pulling that information from. And it's also pulling my shop calendar from there. I'm saying this cutting press lives in that assembly work center. And again, it has its own load. So we can see that there. Based on that cutting press, you can see I've used it. I used it for a minute here, and it'll actually show me what I did and at what time. So there's one machine. I also want my sewing machine to kind of finish that off. And that's part of my assembly as well. And more of the same at its own cost, its own flushing method, its own capacity. This one doesn't have a setup time. The machine's set up to go all day, just pass it along and it gets sewed up. So those are machine centers and work centers. I want to go into our routings now. So I built out 2 different ones. You can see I have a medical face mask and a medical face 2. I did 2 different ones just to show sometimes when you're using routing link codes, how they can work for you. And maybe you don't need that. Maybe you just need a bare minimum flow. So let's go ahead and look at that 400. So for that 400 one, you can see here, I use routing link codes. These link codes will link back to our BOMs, which I'll show next. And it's saying during a certain step, this is where that particular raw material gets used. And I'll show you again in the BOM. So when I'm cutting my fabric, it's linked back to routing link code 1. And under my BOM, under that specific fabric or cloth, I could put 01. That means at this step, I must cut that fabric and must be consumed there, and I must create an output. The reason why you might do this is because sometimes you have scrap. Maybe you have a piece of fabric. Obviously, sometimes things go off. You lose some pieces, maybe it cuts wrong the first couple of them. You want to be able to scrap that. You don't want to say, hey, I did a perfect 100 when you don't necessarily have that. So that's an important step. As well, I have a routing link code for the sewing machine because obviously maybe I'm sewing something up, I mess up, I sew it wrong, I might have some scrap quantity there. I might need an output for that finished good. And then obviously I have my packaging department. That's the last step, and I want the last step to have an output because it might require a lot. And then a little information on this. You have your basic information. You can put any number you want, or you can use the number series that you have set up. You can write any description. It's free type. And then here you have the type. The difference between serial and parallel is when you choose serial, one step has to go after the other. When you choose parallel, it's saying, hey, I could send these things ahead, or all these go at the same time. Maybe you have a giant department and it just runs perfectly seamless, parallel, so you don't need specific time for each step. When you're doing serial, it says, I cannot go on to the next step until this one's done. So that's also something to think about. And then obviously you have your different statuses. When you first start, it'll say new. When you're done, you will certify it. If you ever need to make edits, you want to put that under development. And if you ever want to stop or discontinue this routing, you can hit close there and you can no longer use that. And then you can see you can have different versions. So maybe you have, the same version, but different steps added to it. I can have different versions and I could select which one I'm using with this drop down here. And then it'll actually show which one's active. And then obviously I have my nice last modify. So if any changes were made, we could see that mark there. And some things here, you can see the times are being pulled in. I said these require a certain setup time. This one's the only one that required a move time. And when you see lot size, I'm saying that based, I could do this since I have it per minute. I say I could do a lot size of 100 per minute. So I can cut 100 masks per minute. And here is I could package 100 masks per minute. If you leave this at 0 or 1, it's saying that you require 1 minute per item or unit, which might, if you're setting it up wrong, you see, hey, this is taking 5 days or it's calculating 5 days. That's usually what the case is. So be careful when you're allocating that. You want to make sure that you say, well, per minute or whatever it might be, right? You might have per hour. How many can I do per that time? And that's where you would set those up. Obviously, you can have a different number for your cutting press and your sewing machine. But I'm saying I could do about 100 per minute, and I could package about 100 per minute. So once this is done, we want to certify this, and now we can see our bombs. And here again, 2 different styles. I have a medical face mask and I have a medical face mask version 2. Here is where I'm using my routing link codes. So here's my medical face mask. My unit of measure is box. I'm not counting per. I'm saying, I could create a box of these. There's 100 per box. And then here's what I need per that box. So I just need 0.1 yards. And again, 0.1 drawstring to go with that. And then I need a special logo box to be created for each one that I make, each 100 units that I make. And here you can see the routing link codes coming into play. Let me show you kind of what the description's on that. So you can see one's a machine, one's assembling, and one's packaging. You can have as many of these as you want. You can show the details if you want to drill down kind of how to build them out. It's very simple. You can literally call it anything you want, and you don't even have to use a number. You can use any code or description you'd like there. And so I'm just tying them back. That's how you tie them back to the routing, and that's how it calculates what material should be used at what step. Once I'm happy with that, I could certify that. If I want to do a more simple version, then I would use no routing link codes, and I just say I just need to consume all this, and that's it. And now we can go into our items. So let's take a look at our items here that we're going to use for making that face mask. I did my own little drop down here and save my menu so you guys can kind of see what that looks like. It's a more shortened down version. You can see the quantity on hands, what's lot tracked, and the base unit of measures here. So here's obviously my finished good is that medical face mask. Give this a second here. And again, my base unit of measure I want to use when building this out is the lowest common denominator. So I say it's eaches. So that way, when I go ahead and create my units of measure, I could say, hey, in each box, there's 100 of these eaches. That doesn't mean I need to produce in eaches. I could still produce in box, but it's always great to start with the lowest common denominator and build up from there, because then I could say, there's X amount in a box, X amount in a pallet, X amount in a case, and whatever that might be. And I could build those out. So my default is eaches, my item category code is medical supplies, and then obviously my type's inventory. You have different kind of things, right? You can be a service, you can be a non-inventory. A non-inventory product, for example, was if I was in the food industry and I'm using water, but I don't pay a vendor, I just pay the water bill. I would do that as non-inventory and it would still calculate for me. And obviously as a service, I'm doing a special service. If I require a special wrap or tape that I have to take time to do, I could add that value-added service. So if we go down here, we can see all the nice hyperlinks. We can see the quantity on hand currently for this product, what's on production orders, and the quantity on sales orders. So we can see that we drastically need to make some production orders to equate this here. And our costing method is FIFO, but that's not the only one you can use. You can use LIFO, specific, average, or standard. That's up to you. And then we have our general posting groups and inventory posting groups. It's very important. You will get error messages if you kind of forget to put that. So be sure to see that there. And then since we have FIFO, we can drill into our cost and kind of what's calculating that. So you can see that I've had certain outputs and I've had a sales order ship out, and that's what's driving that price, but it's been pretty standard. And then if we go down more, we have our prices and sales. So here's what's nice, right? Here I can choose a different unit of measure. So you can see that the base unit of measure is eaches, but I sell it in a box. I am not going to sell one mask at a time. I'll sell you a box of 100. So here's where you would actually drop that in. If you ever had to build a new one, you could build one new one straight from here. And this is kind of showing my profit margin here. It cost me 30 cents to make. And if I'm selling it for 50 cents each, I'm getting a 40% profit margin. If we go down below, we have a replenishment system. I'm making this to be a production order. Once you trigger that, that'll trigger this side here. So I need to create my manufacturing policy, which is make to stock, or I can make it to order. When I make it to stock, I'm just saying simply that I'm making this straight for the shelf and it can be picked for any kind of demand that's required. When I make it to order, it means I need to have a sales order in the system and able to create this product. I'm not just going to house this or shelve this product if it's made to order. I'm actually going to do it specifically. It's going to tie back to a certain order. And then here's our routing number that we created and our production BOM to be assigned. And again, the flush sheet method will be manual. And here's some more information if you want to put here how much scrap percentage usually is, or what's the lot size of this product, or any overhead rate that you already know. You can enter that information there as well. This rounding precision will come into play later when I show you the raw materials. And then here's where we plan it. So what's our reorder policy? I currently have it lot for lot. So whatever I require, I need to go ahead and go make. But you can do a fixed reorder, a maximum, or an order. Fixed reorder is obviously I need a specific unit amount every single time. I'm just not going to create this product just to match up. Or a maximum order is I can never make more than an X amount of time. Orders, obviously, again, if there's a sales order, I'm going to match that. And then lot for lots, whatever I need. And including inventory, it'll do the offset and show me what balance I need to create. So I put some minimum order quantities of 100 and a maximum of 10,000, and anything after that, I'm only going to do in orders of 500. And this item, I do want it to be lot tracked so I can be able to trace it in case there's any kind of malfunction. And this is our finished good card, but we also need to create our raw material card. So if we look at here, here's our raw material. You can see this is a different base unit of measure. It's in yards. This is still the same item category code because we want to keep them all together in case we want to report on it. You can see that it's taking from units on quantity on hand, it's 0.69. I'm going to show you why that is. You can see that I need 0.2 on a certain production order. So again, more of the same. What's your costing method? What's the price? You need your general posting details, your inventory posting group. And then if you go down below, I'm not going to sell this. So if you ever want to block this so it doesn't show up on sales orders, you can do sales block. That doesn't mean you can't consume it or purchase it. But what's important to me is my replenishment system is different. My replenishment system for this is purchase. And here I could use my default vendor. I'm just going to get it from this Fabricam ink. And then if it has its own unique vendor item number that they specifically ask for every time you order, you can enter that there. And I purchase it in a yard. And then here's where your rounding precision comes into play. If I have this perfectly at 1, that means it's going to consume 1 yard no matter what. You want to put that decimal. I put it to the second one, so it's going to consume up to the second decimal just because I know I'm going to be cutting and peeling from it. I'm not going to consume an entire yard every time. Again, our flushing method's manual. The reorder policy is lot for lot. I just want to order whatever I need, and I want to include inventory. And this is not lot tracked. Since I'm cutting the fabric, it's going to go into many different things and can be used for anything. And that's our item card. If you ever need to create a stock keeping unit, you simply just have to click home and create stock keeping unit. If you want to carry over the pricing or replace a SKU, you can do that. If you want to add a certain inventory posting group to be copied over, you can set that up here, and you want to be specific of what location this is for. Once you hit OK, it'll create a stock keeping unit for you. And the only reason I'm covering this is because for certain materials, when you have multiple locations, you have to create the stock keeping units. So let's just go into our finished good here. So here you can actually have different replenishment policies. So for example, if I make it somewhere, but I send it somewhere else, I could transfer order it, or I could, maybe I assemble it at this location. This is just more unique. If you have multiple locations, you can set up a unique way to build it or have it brought to you. And you can have different pricings, you can have different planning methods. So that's when your stock keeping unit comes into play. Again, only if you have multiple locations and you need to set it up differently for each. Here's where you would do that. Awesome. So, okay, we have our work centers, machine centers, we have our routings, we have our BOMs, we have our items with our routings and work centers assigned to them, and also our BOM assigned to it. So now we have demand, as we saw on the item card. We have about 1,000 out there that we need to create. So let's go into the planning worksheet. The planning worksheet is just an easy way for the system to do the work for you. At any time you can create an order manually by yourself. That's not a problem. I'll show you how to do that as well. But the planning worksheet is just simply pulling in the items for you, and it'll carry out an action message, will create all the orders so you don't have to go manually enter them. So what you want to do is search for the planning worksheet, hit prepare, and you want to calculate the regeneration plan. So we have MPS and MRP. Okay, MPS is our master planning, and then MRP is our master master raw materials, right? So replenishment. So this is where we buy the raw material that goes into it that needs to be consumed, and here's where we plan our production orders. We want to do the MPS first, which will create the demand for the MRP. So let's go ahead and run that MPS, and we can filter by a number or location if we like. I'm just going to run it open since I don't have many items, so you can see what that looks like. Think here for a second. There it goes. Awesome. So here you can see I have a couple of manufacturing orders, and we have a different kind of warnings. What's nice here is that since I have such a high demand and I have some orders out there, it wants me to cancel it and just include it into my quantity. That's up to you. If you want to choose to do that, you can delete one, or you can add quantities, or you could just choose to ignore it. Here are some other things that are not part of this demo, so I can just go ahead and delete these. That doesn't mean that this goes away, it just simply means that I'm not carrying out these action messages. If you click on these warnings, they'll tell you exactly why as well. So you see I have a safety stock quantity of 100 and a order multiple of 500. And it's also telling me that I have a starting date of 7/5, that's before the work date. So it's nice, right? It tells me exactly why it's creating that many. And we can see it's telling me to cancel this original order quantity of 1 and just have it included in my 1,000 order. And then you can see here for the V2, it's telling me that I have 902, and I could just cancel that cancel this 1 of 1 and include it in there as well. If I choose to carry one of these out, let's go ahead and just carry out that first one there and create our new manufacturing order. So let me click on these guys and I could delete multiple lines at once. And I'm just simply going to carry out this order. I want to create an order for 1,000 of these masks. Now all I have to do is carry out the action message. It'll give me a new prompt. You can fill this in. Once you do it once, it's going to default for you. You don't have to do it every time. So how do you want your production orders to be created? Do you want them firm, planned, or planned? Do you want it to print out when you hit OK? As well with assembly orders, more the same. How do you make them? Do you want it to print? And then the purchase orders is, do you want to copy it over to a rec worksheet for a buyer to release and make, or do you just want to make them and print them out? And then if you want to make transfer orders, the combined transfer orders is good as well, just so you don't have to make multiple shipments. It just combines all under one. And we want it to always stop and show the first ever if we ever run into it. So let's go ahead and hit OK. So there we see it, it's gone. If I had it printed, it would print up for me. So let's go see what that looks like. So here's our firm plan production order. We can see that 1,000 that just got created. And we can click into that and kind of see what that looks like. So this is great. Obviously, the system did all the work for us. We didn't have to enter any of this information. It strictly pulled it from the demand using the planning worksheet. Now that this is in the system, we also need to create for the material requisition. So let's go ahead and go back into that planning worksheet and run the MRP. So let's go back and calculate, but this time we're going to toggle this guy. You can see in my manufacturing setup, I have it so I don't run both at the same time. I kind of want to see the production order be completed first and then show me what raw materials I need. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that on. I have a certain date range I want to buy it by. I'm not going to put a filter and my location code is manufacturing. I'm going to hit OK. So this is what the system's saying, hey, based on everything that you're creating, you just created an order for 1,000 of those units. We might want to purchase some more materials. We can ignore these last three. These are part of some other thing that needs to be created as well. Just going to go ahead and delete that. But we can see that we need some cloth material. We need some drawstrings. I could combine these. So I don't have to buy a 0.31. I don't ever do that. So I could say, okay, well, I'm just going to create a purchase order for 11 yards and this one 11 as well, and just round it out for myself. And then I could go ahead and delete those 0.31s because I do not want to see that. And to avoid that, obviously, you do your minimum maximums and you say I only buy a yard at a time. So it never tells you to buy 0.32 of a yard. So once I'm happy with this, I have my vendor number and I would do the same. I just click on accept action message and then go ahead and carry it out. You see the same screen pop up. All my defaults are there and I hit OK. Now what this does is it creates a purchase order for me for those materials, which you can see here. So now that I have everything I need, the system did the work for me, I could get started on my manufacturing order. So that's one way you can let the system do it for you based on demand. Obviously, you can just do it yourself at any time. You can even pull in sales orders that'll help you out. So let's just go ahead and let's start with firm. So when we have our firm plan, this means, this is what we're expecting to make. It hasn't been released yet. At this time, we can still make changes. We can manipulate things. We can change the due date. We can change quantities. It's really up to us. We can also do replan. So if we had subcomponents and we hit replan, it will backflush and see what else we need to create in addition for this order. And then again, you could print a shortage list from here, a job card. We could kind of see what that looks like here. Just what's my requirements? What do I need? What's this going to go through? It says it's going to take about 50 minutes to create. What's each step it touches? And then obviously if I have shortage of items, I don't think I'll have anything on my shortage list. Well, I do because I haven't received it. So you can see that I'm kind of short on stuff here. You can print that up here as well in case you need to purchase those or make someone aware that those need to be purchased as well. And I could see any kind of statistics, comments, or added mentions. The statistics is how much I'm expected to spend, what's my capacity overhead, my total costs. It's going to take me roughly 100 minutes. And this is great to see, right? Because this is all pulling from your work center cars, from your machine centers. It's calculating everything that it's actually going to cost you to make this product. Once we're happy with this, then this is the point where we would change the status. We change that status to released. We can also update the unit cost if we wanted to. And now we're going to hit yes and release this. You can see here that it's turned it from a firm plan to a release production order. I'm going to hit OK, and you can see it's gone now. Now we can go take a look at release production orders. And then we can sort this by date and time. We can create our own filter views and save it as well if we wanted to. And we can see that we created this one here, that 1,000. It created for 7.5 since that's when my demand is for. But if I wanted to change this, I could as well. I could say, well, no, that's too much in the back. I'm going to do it to 7-11. And you can see the times updating. You can also manipulate this data and say, I'm going to create this at 6 in the morning. So it's done earlier, and you can see it's still calculating that for us. Don't worry about this quantity. You can always change it. If it's easier for you to say, I want to see it in boxes, not in eaches, you can do that. And it'll still be the same amount. Nothing changes. If you want to see the components that build this out, which we build on our BOM, you can click on components and you can see each method here. You can see the flushing method is manual, which you want to see. And then we can see our different bin codes. So all this is saying is this needs to be in the consumption area in order for it to even be consumed. I can't just go and say, I'm just consuming it from any rack. It has to be in this manufacturing area. That could be changed. Obviously, in my location, if I don't require a consumption bin code, then it's not going to apply for it. So that's something to think about as well. If I had substitutes, I would say yes, and I could choose them here and replace that material. But here's a breakdown per, which is what we want to see. That's correct. And we can go back and we can also see our routings from here to make sure that's pulling in correct. So this one's more of the basic routing. So we can see here that I only have 2 steps. There's no linking codes. So this one's one of the more simpler ones. I could also do production journals from here. So if you don't want someone to make multiple steps, you can see that I just need to consume this product and then I need to do an output. We could do it from here, or we can also do it from our output or consumption journal. So let's go ahead and do our consumption journal. So here in our consumption journal, we'll choose what order we're actually doing. And let's choose this one we just did here, and we're going to calculate consumption. We're going to hit OK. And we can see that, oh, sorry, calculated for all of them. Let me go ahead and delete this. I don't want to see all that noise. Just choose a single order. This last one here. Let me calculate this again. I'll choose my production order here and hit OK. So here we can see, here's what we need to consume for this product based on the BOM. I don't need this first line. Here's our 3 items, exactly what we want to see. We have a simple cloth material, drawstring, and our special box. If I try to post consumption here, it won't let me because on my locations, I have that I need to pick everything for these journals, which is great. I actually want to show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and delete these lines again. So now that I have a couple of release production orders, we can see here that I have 3 of them. I could actually create a pick straight from the order itself, or I could use something called the pick worksheet. that is something that I want to show you because obviously maybe I don't go and create a pick every single time just for one order at a time. Maybe I say, hey, here's all my orders for today, and I need to pick all the raw materials. And that's when the pick worksheet will come into play. So we go into our pick worksheet. It'll come up blank. We could obviously have our own batch names if we choose to. We can build those out. And we want to do is get our warehouse documents. You can see here that I have my production orders and it shows my created by dates. Say I want to pick everything from yesterday to today just because I'm going to run the machines today. I could select each order and hit OK. What this does is it makes a whole pick for everything, right? You can see I have some negatives, so I'm obviously running low on those materials. So I could choose to exclude those from my pick if I wanted to. So let's go ahead and do that. Obviously, I need to receive that order, but let's delete that for now, and let's just pick for the other ones that we have the material for. So you can see that this is just going to create an overall pick for me for 3 different manufacturing orders. It's really up to you again. You can create a whole pick. If we're happy with this, we can create it here. And I could say I could do it per each document. I could do it per item, per bin. There's a lot of sorting methods I could do. I could print the pick and I could choose to not fill in the quantity. I want the people to actually do that as well. I could hit OK and it'll prompt another screen. And I want to say I want to sum up everything. And I wanted to show the serial number on the pick. And if we preview that, this will group it and it'll show you what production order it's going for, but it's also summarizing, hey, we need to grab all these things at once. Once I hit X, it's going to create that pick. You can see it there. And again, this is just if I want to pick everything for the day. I don't want to pick each one, or maybe you don't pick. And if that's the case, then you just use a simple item reclass to put it in the consumption area. But here's my pick for every single thing I need. It'll also give me some more detail here where it belongs to. So it's not just to one manufacturing order, it's to 3 different ones. And if I'm happy with this, I'll pick my quantities here. We can click this and it'll autofill it all for me. And then all I have to do is register this pick. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this and do a more simpler one so you can kind of see what one looks like from start to finish. So for example, if I'm just creating this one face mask here, I would go into here, and instead of going to the pick worksheet, I'm just going to pick the components for this one mask. Let me see if this is a more complicated. No, it's the simpler routing. So I'm going to go ahead and create my warehouse pick. I'm going to hit OK. And this is all I'm doing is I'm going to go grab those components so I can start consuming them. So now I go to my warehouse pick. And there it is. I'm just simply picking those materials, moving them to consumption. You can see that one of them is lot tracked. It's just basing it on first in, first out. So it's choosing the lot number of that one. I could obviously, if I have more than one, I could choose a different one if I like, but I'm just going to keep it to that one since that one was first in. And then all I have to do is register my pick. And again, all this is doing is saying, hey, I grabbed all my components. Now I'm going to go put them in my consumption section in my manufacturing area so they can start working on them. Once that is done, now I can do my journals. So this is 10-10-41. So now here's where I would go to my consumption journal. And I would consume those items I just picked. So let's go ahead and click that and calculate that consumption. You see it'll bring it in, delete that first line, so that's our true consumption. And you can see that the quantities are already kind of filled in. I already know it's pulling it based on what I picked. If I look at my logo here and I see the tracking line, you can see that's already filled out. That's the nice thing about picking for these is it's just going to automatically assign those things for you. If not, you would have to do that here on your own when you're consuming it. But since everything's good, I could say, you know, if at any time I said, well, I want to change the unit amount or I'm not consuming as many yards, I could change that as well. But if I'm happy with this, I simply just post my consumption. and I say yes. And now I've consumed the products that I need. And this is where the manual comes in. I have to manually do all these steps. It's not going to backflush or forward. I have to manually consume and manually output. So now that I've consumed my items, I could also look at my production journal, and you can see that I have a 0 consumption quantity because that's been taken care of, but I still need an output quantity. You can see here remaining is 1. So now I want to go to my output journal. In my output journal, do more of the same. I choose what order it's for, and I explode the routing. You can see here that I have 2 steps that I need to do, and here's where I could mark my scrap quantity. So for example, if I was doing 100 of these masks and 1 or 2 got messed up or came out wrong, I could put my output as 98 and scrap as 2. The system will go ahead and take those materials out and not believe that you have more than you actually have in your system. If I'm doing this 1 step at a time, I could also mark it as finished, and that'll finish that step off for me as well. And I could set up, if I did different setup times or run time to calculate, I could do that as well. The most important thing here is that you need to assign a lot number to the last step, which is the packaging department. So I'm going to go to my line. I'm going to go to my item tracking lines. And I can either manually enter a lot number, or if I have a lot number number series, I could just hit assign and it'll automatically assign that for me. You can see there's 100. And that's because there's 100 per case. So I'm going to hit close, and that's going to be my lot tracked. And now I could post my output. Simple as that. Once my output's been posted, we can go back to the release production order, and you can see the finished quantity is 1. So I am all done here. And again, the finished quantity is 1 per box. I did 1 box, which is 100 masks per unit. Once I am done, you could look into your statistics. You can see how much time it actually took. It took me a lot more than I expected, so my difference is very high since I was supposed to do this a couple of days ago. And then my costs are pretty accurate. If we're looking at it here, it just took me a long time to do all these steps. Once I'm happy with this, I could go ahead and change the status to finished. This will close out my production order. This is a very important step. If you don't finish, this will just linger out in your system forever. If I try to delete this, I will get an error because I've done consumption and output. So you can see the errors there. You can't do that. So again, you have to finish these. You have to change the status to finish and what posting date range you want it to. Because maybe it's the next month, but you finished this last week. You know, you just missed that 30th. If you want to back post it, you can, so it hits the books correctly. But I'm just going to give it a finish date of today and hit yes. And that finishes my production order. You have that third screen that's finished. And you can see here that I've done a couple of them. I tested it out yesterday, but you can see that these are all done. Here's my 10-10-41 we just did. It's completely finished. If I check my inventory, I will have that in inventory as well, so it's ready for me to go. The last thing I want to show you is item tracing. So I talked about, obviously, what if we have to recall this? What if people are complaining that there's a defect with our masks? We can either do it by lot or we can do it by item. Let's say, for example, that we want to trace a certain lot, maybe a lot we just did. So let's chase that. I want one with a sales order. Let's chase this 46. Try that one. And we can go ahead and trace that. So anything with that lot number, it's going to trace it back to the origin. So you can see that I'd created output on that at a certain point here, and I just did 1, which is 100 of those masks, but you can see it's also tracing it back to what box I used. And it goes even that deep into it. I want to show one with a sales order, so let me choose a different one. So here we can see more details. So you can see here that This first started as just a custom box. I created output for it here on this production order, and then I shipped out 100 of these on this order. So again, if you need to trace this, if you need to print this out, you can. You can see usage to origin, and you can see origin to usage. It's really up to you. You can do opposite like this, whatever you want to see, right? So now it's showing me a little bit more detail. If I want to track that box, maybe that box was a problem. So I could see when that came in and what's each production order it's touched. So I like item tracing. It's great. Obviously, if you want to pinpoint something down where it's gone, you could do that, and you can print this up as well and have it for your own entries. I do want to show 2 reports before we're done as well. So if you're ever wondering what you need for your production order, I definitely recommend prod order detail. Let's see here, this detail calculation. I like this one the most. I could choose what I want to look at. So maybe I just want to look at all my release production orders. If I'm happy with that, I could see it there, but I could also use a certain date range if I want to use a certain due date or something like that, or when it was created, or I could run it completely open. So let's go ahead and preview this. So I like this report. It gives me all the details for my production order. So for this example, maybe I'm creating steel dampers here. It's showing me each machine center and work center it's using, and then what items go into that order. And then you can see here's kind of the subcomponent for that order as well. And if you go down, we can see more of what we're working on. So here's our medical face mask order. Here's the different work centers, and here's the materials that I'll be using, and there's our total cost. This is nice if you're just wondering what's going to happen today, what do you actually need, what work centers are going to be affected. You can run this report in detail. If you're just wondering what orders need to be done, you have a more simpler report, which is the production order list. And this is just the bare minimum. I'm just saying, I want to see a status of released. I could choose a certain date range. So we could do like the created at, or we could do the due date as well. And we can kind of push it out. I want to see everything between 7/01 and 7/31 due date. That'll save it, and that'll be my filter. But this one's the bare minimum. It's just showing me what orders are out there. So here's my starting dates. Here's my due dates for these orders, and these are essentially what the manager could see and say, okay, I have all these orders to create. I did want to leave a couple of minutes if we have any kind of questions or anything.
We do have one. Which fields are you unable to change after the item is used?
That's a great question. On the item card itself, essentially, realistically, almost every field you can't change. You can always change your base unit of measure, but for example, you can no longer change your inventory type. You could change your costing method, but you won't be able to change, say, for example, this was lot tracked. If I choose not to lot track it anymore, then it'll give me an error and I have to create an actual new card. You can always change the reorder policy, and you can always change the manufacturing, your routes, and production bombs. But the 2 ones you can change is that lot and that item type. It'll give you a nasty error.
And I believe if you use standard cost, you can't change that either.
Yep.
Because your cost will be adjusted. And stock keeping units, you can't change either.
That's it. And that's just because there's GL entries affiliated to it. You can no longer delete that product.
Okay, that was all for our questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I believe we'll do one more, and the next one will be forward flush. So I look forward to that with you guys.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.